Yeah, I love me a good fallen angel every now and then. Patch Cipriano. What's up, book nerds? I'm Lucky's Universe, and today, upon popular request, I am bringing you my top 10 favorite books. As of now, because guaranteed in like a few months, it'll all be different. I've been getting so many people in my comments asking me to do like a recommendations video or talk about my favorite books, so I don't have any other ideas. I am so like unmotivated to do anything right now, so we're just gonna do it. I have tea, I have my books behind me, and we are gonna get right into it. Oh, that's really hot. I tried to get a mix of different genres in here, but I realized while I was making this list that a lot of them are YA fantasies. However, there are some historical fictions, there's a contemporary in there, and a few classics, so bear with me. I'm gonna start off with the YA fantasies. So first we have A Daughter of Smoke and Bone by Lady Taylor. This YA fantasy is about 17-year-old art student Karu, who lives in Prague and was raised by a family of chimera. For those of you who don't know, chimera are these creatures that are made up of several different animals. Karu's family that she's been raised by actually grants people wishes if they bring them teeth. And Karu's job is to go around collecting these teeth from people or just finding teeth wherever she can. And although she's come to accept that her family is able to grant wishes, she's never been told what they use the teeth for. And while she's out collecting teeth, she actually encounters a seraph, an angel named Akiva, who finds her strangely familiar. I think I was like 11 or 12 when I got this book, so the first time I read it, I didn't like it. I think because I was too young at that point, I didn't really understand what chimera were, and most of the themes in the book just went over my head. I was really just too young to read it. So after I first read it, it sat on my shelf forever, and then a few years later, I decided to try again and reread it, and boy did everything make sense. I also really love Karu as a character. She's tough, she's a badass, but also I think what mainly drew me to her is she was a YA female protagonist that wasn't willing to sacrifice everything for her male love interest. Like, there come times in the book where she has to choose between like her family and like the mission that she needs to do and the guy that she's in love with, and most of the time she's like, you know, I'm gonna like try and wait for you, but like I have more important things in my life than you, so like you gotta deal with that. And I really respected that about her. Plus, not gonna lie, Akiva, the angel, isn't that bad to look at. Yeah, I love me a good fallen angel every now and then. Patch Cipriano. If you follow me on TikTok, you probably already know this one, but it is Fire by Kristen Cashore. Fire is about a monster who's in the shape of a human, and her name is Fire. In this kingdom called the Dells, there are monster versions of like everything. So like Fire is a monster human, you can have like monster cats and monster birds and monster wolves. And the most scary things are monster raptors, which are literally like flying dinosaurs. And the most identifying quality of a monster is that they are irresistibly beautiful. So Fire as a human monster is so freaking pretty, but she also has special powers. She has the ability to manipulate people's minds. The Kingdom of the Dells is in a bit of political turmoil at the moment, and the king, Nash, wants Fire to come to the court and help him interrogate prisoners because he's heard about her power. And most of the story goes down once she gets to court, and there's like some romance in there, but then there's also Fire trying to come to terms with like her powers and try and learn not to be afraid of herself, and there's just a lot of stuff that happens, and it's really good and it's really cute. Next up we have TikTok famous Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. I was originally reluctant to read this book because I read the first book in Leigh Bardugo's other really famous trilogy, the Grisha trilogy, a really long time ago, like before I even knew that the Grisha trilogy was like popular. I just saw the cover in the library, read the blurb, and was like, yeah, this looks like something I'll read. But I just didn't like it at all. I didn't like the writing, I didn't like the characters, I thought the story was like, ugh. And so when people were like, you need to read Six of Crows, it's by this author, I just didn't really want to because I thought it was just gonna be Grishaverse 2.0. But then I saw a review by read with Cindy, who like, I'm basically read with Cindy's bitch. Like I will read anything that she reads. And because we shared like quite similar opinions on books, I was like, I guess if she likes it, maybe should I try and read it? I'm so glad I did. Six of Crows is book 1 in a duology, and it follows a cast of characters living in a fantasy city called Ketterdam, which I heard is based off Amsterdam. And they come together to pull off like the most epic and impossible heist, or at least they try to. So the cast of characters is made up of Kaz Brecker, who is a master thief slash sort of a mafia boss. We got Inej, who is Kaz's right hand. She's an acrobat, former acrobat, and is basically Kaz's spy. Wylan, who is the son of a merchant who's really good at like destroying shit. Nina, who is a type of Grisha called a heart render or a heart ender. And she can kind of like control people's bodily organs, functions. We got Matthias, who is someone who used to hunt Grisha. And then we have Jesper, who is a sharpshooter who also works for Kaz. I think what struck me about this book was like the writing, such an improvement from the Grisha trilogy, like so much better. I'm usually not a fan of books that have tons and tons of characters, but I feel like because of the writing and also the length of the chapters was really good, so you were able to like fully connect with one character before you had to move on to the next. I feel like Six of Crows definitely has more action, and then the second book, Crooked Kingdom, is all about like the emotion and the character development. But all in all, just like a really good, well-rounded, developed cast of characters is what I love about this book. Next up we have The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. This is another YA fantasy, and I'm not gonna go too much into it because I have explained this so many times. Also, I did like an entire video, like a reading blog. I'll link it up here. So if you want to know more about this book, just go watch my other videos on it. Quick summary, it's about a girl named Celia and a boy named Marco who are trained by rival magicians to compete in a game that will span over many years, for which the arena is like a magical circus. There's tons of magic, there's lots of like illusion, the imagery is super cool but like not overwhelming. The romance is like so freaking cute. And this is like one of just all-time favorite books. I love this book. Okay, we made it out of YA fantasy. Whew, that was a long run. Now we are moving into historical fiction with Tidelands by Philippa Gregory. I have loved Philippa Gregory ever since I was a teenager. I was always super into historical fiction. My favorites of hers are the books from like the War of the Roses. I think if you've ever seen the TV shows The White Queen or The White Princess, you'll probably know that it's based off those books. But yeah, I just really love her historical fiction. It's so good. So Tidelands is set in England in the year 1648, yes. And it follows our main character, Eleanor, who is alone with her children after her abusive husband has been declared lost at sea. Because she is descended from a family of wise women, aka witches, like this is 1600s England, so being descended from witches, not a good thing. So the rest of the village are like super suspicious of her. They kind of tolerate her. Some people are nice, but because Eleanor is like more ambitious and more determined than the rest, it makes the villagers come to despise her. She meets a man named James and they develop a sort of forbidden romance. I was super excited to get this book. My mum took me to the bookstore right before Christmas and was like, pick a book that you want, I'll buy it for you, and that's your Christmas present. And I was like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. I really want Tidelands by Philippa Gregory because it was kind of new at that point and I was just like, I wanted to read it. Mum bought it for me and I was like, oh, I can't wait to read it. She was like, no, I'm taking it with me and you can't read it until I give it to you at Christmas. I had to wait like 3 weeks to read this book and it was so frustrating but so worth the wait. I think what struck me about this book was how much I hated the characters. Don't get me wrong, I liked Eleanor. Eleanor's the main character and I really liked her. But like everyone else, I hated with a passion. But I think that's what made me appreciate it, is because they were written to be hated. Like anytime one of them opened their mouth, I was like, screw you. Why are you even talking? I don't like you. Shh. And it's really hard to get readers to like react like that with such a passion for certain characters. So I think that's what I think is so good about this book. Okay, we're bringing out an old OG here, and this is I Am the Great Horse by Catherine Roberts. This is a children's historical fiction slash fantasy-ish, because some of the characters in here the author made up or gave like a bigger role than history usually gave them. I got this book when I think I was about 10 years old, and at that point it was the thickest book I'd ever read. But this is one of the books that really got me into reading historical fiction. I Am the Great Horse is about King Alexander the Great, but told through the eyes of his war horse Bucephalus. Bucephalus first meets Alexander when he's still a prince. The horse is battle-scarred and old and temperamental, but he only lets 2 people sit on his back, and that is Prince Alexander, or the then Prince Alexander, and a girl named Charm, who is posing as a stable boy, because at that time only boys were allowed to look after the horses, and she has like this special connection with Bucephalus, so she's pretending to be a stable boy so that she can stay close to him. She also has a little secret reason to want to stay close to Bucephalus and the king, but I'll leave that up to someone else to read. There's like, I mean, if you're someone who likes action, you'll probably like it, because there's like a heck ton of battles in here. And I think what I really like is, I'm trying to find, like, after every battle, they have like the battle stats down here, and it tells you like how many people died, how many horses died, how many prisoners were taken. And this is just like a really in-depth story about the travels of King Alexander and his obsession with conquering the world, and his relationships, and also the relationship between King Alexander, Bucephalus, and Charm, the girl who looks after the horse. It's super interesting. A funny thing about this book, I think you can see, it's very, very old. I've had this for a long time. It's one of those books where like, I don't even lend it to people anymore, because you have to be so careful when you turn the pages, because they might rip out. And speaking of pages that ripped out, when I was in high school, my friend and I decided to do this thing where she would give me her favorite book, I would give her my favorite book, we would swap. And I decided before I gave her this book, I thought I'll just reread it for fun. And I did, and I got to a certain part, I was reading. I went to the next page and I was like, huh, these pages don't match up. This is different. I look, and there are 49 pages missing from the middle of this book. I have no idea where they went. Like, even if you look at it, you can't even tell that there are pages missing. Like, how does that even happen? Luckily, at the time, I had read this book so many times that I basically remembered it, and I stuck in a little sticky note and I did dot points of absolutely everything that happens within those 49 pages for if anyone wanted to read it. But yeah, this is like an ongoing thing in my family about where the missing pages went, because I have changed rooms in my house. I have moved house, and like I've packed up all my stuff, unpacked all my stuff, and the pages have never returned. Like, where did they go? Mystery of the missing pages. Yeah, this holds just like so much childhood nostalgia for me. I reread it all the time, anytime I just like want to feel happy, even though there's just a bunch of death and war and terrible things. But it's okay, it makes me feel happy. Okay, next book. Bet you didn't think I'd have a dystopian teen fiction on this list, but what is that? I don't feel like I need to go that much into this book. It is The Diabolic by S.J. Kincaid. I did a summary of this book on my June 2020 wrap-up, my month in books, so I'll link that up here if you want to go hear me talk about this book. It's a dystopian teen fiction slash sci-fi, and it follows the main character Nemesis, who is a genetically engineered creature called a Diabolic, and she's created to protect this girl named Sidonia. Sidonia's family get into trouble, and the Emperor of Space summons Sidonia to the court to be like a hostage or a ward, and Sidonia's family obviously doesn't want to do that, so they disguise Nemesis as Sidonia and send her in her place. And while she's there, Nemesis has to navigate the tricky court politics, come to terms with like her own creation, and just like figure her shit out. And yeah, I really like it. Okay, home stretch, we got 3 to go. Next up is a contemporary young adult called Cloud Wish. Cloud Wish by Fiona Wood follows the story of a girl named Van Ok Phan, whose parents immigrated to Australia from Vietnam. Her parents do everything they can to send her to a really nice private school, but unfortunately Vanoc is often picked on for not having as much money as the other students. Also, she really wants to do art, but her parents obviously want her to do something that's more financially advantageous, and so she's kind of living this double life where she's applying to art schools and doing art projects under her parents' noses. She also has a secret crush on the most popular boy at school, whose name is Billy Gardner. During an English class at school, they have a visiting author who makes them do a writing exercise where they take out different items from a box and just write a short story about it. Vanoc picks a little bottle that has the word wish written on it, and kind of sarcastically she says in her head, "Oh, I wish Billy Gardner would notice me." After she's finished the writing exercise, she notices that the bottle is gone. And suddenly, after that day, Billy Gardner starts paying attention to her. This book is especially important to people like me who live in Australia. Anyone else who lives in Australia knows that there's this ongoing issue about asylum seekers in Australia and the way that the government treats them and the way that other people treat them. And I think this book makes a lot of important and thought-provoking points about that. And it's also, on the other hand, just like a really good coming-of-age teenage romance. Now we are moving into our final two with Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. I first read this book when I was in high school. We had to study it in literature and I really liked it from the get-go. At the time, I was super into the gothic fiction scene. For those of you who don't know the story, Frankenstein is about a young doctor named Victor Frankenstein who creates a creature using unorthodox science and soon lives to regret it. He originally creates the creature to be like beautiful, but because science doesn't work that way, he finds himself repulsed by the ugliness of the creature and rejects it. The creature at first is sad and confused. He's like, "Dad, why don't you love me?" But then he starts to get really angry and decides to take his revenge on Victor. I think the writing in this book is so good. Like, you can see all of the notes that I made during school about how great this stuff was. There are a lot of important themes. The characters are really great, except for the female characters. The female characters kind of suck. I think I like hating characters, and I hated Victor so much. And I liked the way that the writing sort of made us question Victor, but also like sympathize with the creature. And it's very thought-provoking, this novel. Like, I feel like you gotta read it at least once and like research the themes and the ideals in it. And just like, you just gotta understand it. It's really interesting once you get into it. And last up, we have a book that is pretty self-explanatory, Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. I'm so happy that I found this cover. It's a little bit worn now because it's pretty old, but like, it's so pretty. This hardcover. I love my classic novels when they have hardcovers. It's just like, I'm pretty sure almost anyone who's on BookTube will know what Pride and Prejudice is about, but in case you don't, it's about a girl named Elizabeth Bennet who lives with her family, and they're kind of sort of poor, like not destitute, but they don't have a lot of money. And there's this very affluent family that comes to their town, and Elizabeth's mum is trying to get one of Elizabeth's sisters to marry the son. The son, who's called Mr. Bingley, falls in love with Jane's older sister, and everyone's like, sweet, that's great. But Mr. Bingley has a friend named Mr. Darcy who's like, Mr. Bingley, you should probably be aware, I think she's just after your money. You should skirt right out of that one. Mr. Bingley leaves. Jane, who is Elizabeth's elder sister, is like devastated. She's like, why'd he leave? Elizabeth finds out that Mr. Darcy was behind it, and she's like, oi, what gives? Mr. Darcy falls in love with Elizabeth. Elizabeth rejects Mr. Darcy, but then eventually she realizes that she's actually in love with him, and then he realizes that he's still in love with her, and then big epic romance. It's great, I love it. So much drama, so much romance, so much tea. I think I love Pride and Prejudice just for the reason that I love almost all like classic romances, is that I just really like old-fashioned courting romance. I also really admired the way that when Mr. Darcy first proposes to Elizabeth, she rejects him. Usually sometimes in YA or in like just a lot of romances, the guy will do something wrong. The girl will be like, oh my gosh, that's so freaking bad of them. I can't believe they did that. The guy will be like, oh, my bad. I'm really sorry. I'm in love with you. And then the female protagonist will be like, you're in love with me? Okay, that's fine then. I like that when Mr. Darcy proposes to Elizabeth, she's like, wait. You broke up your friend and my sister for like no reason. You also just told me that you like me against your better judgment. You make fun of my family. You expect me to marry you? Like, dude, what is wrong with you? And she rejects him. And so when that part was happening in the book, I was like, yes, get it, reject him, boo, Mr. Darcy, So that was something that I really admired about Elizabeth Bennet, and I look up to her a lot, and I really love this book. It's great. It's so cute. It's great. So that brings me to the end of my top 10 books / book recommendations. Thank you so much for hanging in there. I don't know how long this is gonna be. I'm gonna have to like edit out so much of this again because I talk way too much. My tea is almost cold. That's how long I've been talking. Still good though. If you don't already follow me on TikTok, go check that out. I post some pretty cool stuff on there. I will also leave a link below to my Twitter and my Goodreads and my Patreon and also my brother's Twitch if you want to go check out some gaming stuff. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you later.